All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Healthcare at Michigan Ross webinar. My name is Taya Sapp. I'm an Associate Director of Admissions here. Excited to introduce you to some of our current students in the program and share with you a lot of the resources we have if you're interested in going to healthcare post-Ross, and exactly why we think Michigan's the best place if you want to do healthcare. So I will go through a couple of things. So I'm going to do a quick high-level overview of Michigan Ross in case this is your first event that you've been to, and just introduce you to a couple of things that we see as differentiators about the school before I introduce you to our students and we shift into a little bit more of a healthcare-specific focus. So these are the three things that we really see as the main differentiators about the school. And you'll see some of these things you start to see other schools talking about too. But as you dive a little bit deeper, you'll start to see how Ross really stands out in each of these areas. So the first is experience-driven learning. So we always like to say, if you learn best by doing, there's no better place to do it than at Ross. So we're going to talk through a lot of different things, examples of how you can do that specifically in healthcare. But I really invite you to think about your learning style and how you learn best. And if it is by actually rolling up your sleeves and doing things and actually experiencing things firsthand, then Ross is really a place that should be in your consideration set. The next is close-knit community. So we're really proud of the diverse class that we have here. And as you talk to current students, as you reach out to student ambassadors on our website, which I encourage you to do if you haven't already, you'll understand that the community is something that we have a lot of pride in here at the school. It really matters to us who is here, who's going to be part of our alumni network. And so we really do, from the admissions standpoint, value diverse backgrounds, diversity in all respects of the word, essentially. And the third is Go Blue, Go Anywhere. I will switch to my next slide to kind of demonstrate this. This is essentially we use this phrase, Go Blue, is something you hear from Michigan fans a lot. It's kind of our call to action. When you see another Michigan fan, you always say Go Blue. So we like to use that phrase paired with Go Anywhere, which it can mean a couple things. It can mean there's ample study abroad opportunities. It can mean the types of diverse interests and career interests and industries that people go into post-Ross. But one thing that we really like to make sure people know is that when you come to Ross, you're not just necessarily going to be going to somewhere in the Midwest. You see all the data points of where people went to from this past year, and you see that the largest portion of our students are actually going to the West Coast. But a large portion still go to the East Coast and Chicago, and you see even 8% go internationally. So when we say Go Blue, Go Anywhere, we mean a couple of different things, but largely we want to make sure that you know that your alumni network is going to really be all over the world. All right, and to go over our agenda really quickly here, the things we're going to focus on that are healthcare specific. So we're going to talk a little bit about the healthcare curriculum at Ross, the classes and activities that you can do. MAP, which some of you might have heard of, but we'll introduce that to you. That's one of the cornerstones to really the Ross experience and our experiential-based learning. We're going to talk through the career support resources, so the different types of things that you can leverage to help you get into the job that you want to have. And then we're going to talk about the Healthcare and Life Science Club, which all the students that you're about to meet are members of, and offers a ton of really helpful resources to help you navigate the healthcare landscape. And at the end, we'll have questions. You're welcome to start submitting them in the question box, and I'll read those and answer them once we get to the questions at the end. But if there's questions that are on your mind now, don't hesitate to start asking them. All right, so that said, I am going to hand things over to our three current students who are here with me and introduce themselves, talk a little about their background, and then why they decided to come to Ross and specifically for healthcare.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you guys today. So my name is Pat Kalla. I am currently an MBA 2 in the MBA program. Prior to coming to Ross, I got a Bachelor of Science in Business from the University of Minnesota, and so I studied marketing, so I have a business background. Pre-MBA, I worked for, most recently, a product development company called Logic PD, where I was doing a lot of market research and strategy work for mid-market healthcare companies. Prior to that, I was working in analytics outside of healthcare, and then before that, I was working at United Health Group doing strategic planning and market research. So I come from a healthcare background, and for me, it was really important as I was choosing MBA programs to find an MBA program that was really strong in healthcare. So for me, Ross was a differentiator in that way, and we'll talk more about that. In MAP, I worked for Paragate Medical, which is a healthcare startup based in Nazareth, Israel. And then for my internship, as well as where I'm going afterwards, I'm going to be working in an interventional cardiology business unit within Boston Scientific.
Hi everybody. My name is Lucas Gong. I have an engineering background, so I studied biomedical engineering at Duke for undergrad, and then got a master's in it at the University of Pennsylvania. Following my academic career, or I guess in between, I worked in tech, and then most recently at Epic, the EMR company, so hospital software systems. And then I came to Ross wanting to, get out of the engineering role and move towards the business side. I'm mostly looking at opportunities in marketing. So I did my MAP at Medtronic, a marketing project. I did an internship, marketing-focused internship at GSK, so in pharma. And currently I'm looking at opportunities in pharma and healthcare technology.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Courtney Pupat. I am technically a first-year student at Ross, but in my second year of the dual degree program between Ross and the School of Public Health, getting my MBA and MPH. Prior to Ross, and actually before working, I studied business administration at the University of Southern California. Also got a public health minor. I knew that in my career I wanted something where I could create an impact on people's lives, but did not know necessarily what industry. So right after graduating from college, I went to work for FDIC as a bank regulator, gained significant technical skills in financial risk management, and also at the same time did extracurricular activities in terms of volunteering at a local hospital, and knew that I still wanted to be in healthcare eventually. So I decided to pivot, and Michigan stood out to me as a great school for making that career switch, and also having a top school public health program, as well as a strong network at Ross where I can see myself going in anywhere in the country because I'm not geographically tied. So knowing that that network is there was something that stood out to me.
Awesome. So we're going to have each of these guys talk through the different points that I mentioned in the agenda and walk you through some of the things they think stands out about healthcare at Ross. And we can go ahead from there.
So we're going to start off by talking about the healthcare curriculum. So during the fall of your first year, you're mostly going to take core classes such as strategy, accounting, economics. So most of the electives you'll be able to take in winter A of the first year, and then mostly in the second year. So for the elective options, there are many different classes, not just at Ross, but also in other schools outside of Ross as well. I so far have only taken 2 electives so far: business of biology, which is learning more about the pharmaceutical industry, health insurance in America, which is about policy implications of health insurance that applies to many different industries within healthcare. Maybe Lucas and Pat can speak to other electives that they've taken.
So one of the things that we like to think about when we talk about the curriculum is there are many ways to engage your healthcare experience at the University of Michigan. So Courtney is a dual degree student, so predominantly a lot of her healthcare expertise is going to come from the School of Public Health, but she can opt into and has decided to opt into some of the Ross classes because they offer a little bit more of a business focus through the lens of healthcare. We also have the official healthcare management concentration. So the healthcare management concentration is one of a few official designations that Ross allows students to receive. And that is basically you take a number of classes that are focused and are pre-approved for this concentration, and allows you to have somewhat of a distinct advantage when it comes to recruitment. And recruiters really know that you are interested in healthcare and that you're dedicated to the industry through your class selection. But you don't have to receive the concentration in order to actually do the electives. So the electives are open to anyone. A lot of them are actually cross-listed. So what that means is we have people who are just receiving degrees in public policy or just receiving degrees in information sciences. And so what I really like about the electives is that it gives you not only the opportunity to interact with just MBA students, just business students, but you have the opportunity to interact with a lot of people from a variety of different functions. And one of the things that our perspective is that the best ideas in healthcare are going to come from interdisciplinary teams. And so you start that experience in your classroom discussions. And it's not, the best ideas are not just going to come from business students. So that's where Ross, I think, differentiates itself. And then you have the MAP program. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but we have a number of MAP projects where you can, if you don't have a healthcare background, you can dive into a real world scenario or real world project and kind of flex your healthcare muscles. And if you do have a healthcare background, but you want to explore a different part of the industry, or you just want to kind of bolster your resume further, you can opt into those projects as well. So that's really where the Michigan Ross perspective is with the curriculum.
Yeah. So it is, I mean, like Pat said, I think one thing you build on these classes, and one thing that I was mentioning earlier, this MAP, it stands for Multidisciplinary Action Projects. That's actually part of the curriculum. Students get credit for that. So it's considered a class, even though it's actually a project. How much many people think of it as another internship. So Lucas is going to talk a little bit about MAP.
All right, so the MAP program, we match small groups of students with a company for about 7 or 8 week engagement. It's basically like a mini consulting project. The way that the matching works is each student gets the full list of possible MAP projects for the year, and they rank their top 15, and then there's a selection process, and then small groups of probably 4 to 6 students get matched with each company. The companies can range from huge companies such as Amazon to startups, and they're spread all over the world geographically, all over the U.S., but there are a lot of international opportunities as well. So Pat mentioned his was with a startup in Israel. I worked with Medtronic in Los Angeles. So you can just sort of see just from those 2 examples that there are a lot of healthcare opportunities, and they range from really large companies to really small ones. So there's the opportunity to work with whatever capacity, whatever location that you want. And the great thing about MAP is that it really does throw you in, get your hands dirty with a real problem, a real world issue that the company is dealing with. And the companies engage with Ross for these MAP projects because they have a really relevant issue that they want an outside perspective on. And so the MAP project gives students an opportunity to learn about a business problem and then present it in front of company leadership. Since these are real projects, I think it's 91% of projects they have their final presentation delivered to senior executives last year. And so in that sense, it is really like a mini internship. You're spending all of your time for about 7 or 8 weeks on this engagement. And it really is another opportunity to, excuse me, to get experience with real business situations.
So just to give you guys a little bit more concrete examples of what a MAP project is. So you can see in the bottom right corner, Paragate Medical. So that was the MAP project or the company that I worked with on my MAP project. They were based in Nazareth, and it was an implantable device, and they weren't commercialized yet, but they wanted to determine a go-to-market strategy for the US. So how were they going to position the device? Who were their key customers? What was their key value proposition? Do some regulatory kind of FDA scans of how should they even approach this, and present a holistic strategy to them so that when they get to that point of commercialization, they know exactly how to enter the market and who to target. This was an amazing experience. So you're not only working with companies that are international, but for me, we had the opportunity to travel in Israel for 9 days. So we were in Nazareth, we were in Tel Aviv, we went to Jerusalem. So it's not only that work experience, but it is a cultural experience. And I think that's another thing that is a really big benefit in our MAP projects, particularly the international ones, is that some of us may not have had the opportunity in our previous professional experience to work internationally or work with international clients. And so this also gives you that opportunity to have that type of experience as well, because we're all going to be working at huge companies and that are, you know, multinational. And so we need to be able to have those skills as well.
Yeah. MAP is like, it's something that is really specific to Ross. A lot of other schools have started doing something similar, have actually consulted with us about starting things up similar, but no other school does it to the level of depth that we have. And this is a required program for 7 weeks out of your first year. So every student has to do a MAP. Not everybody has to do a healthcare MAP, but everybody has to do a MAP project. And I think it's also really a good tool when we get into some of the career stats that people use if you're looking to change industry or change function. I think it's really a great way to, you'll have an internship, but you're also going to have this MAP project. So you have 2 separate things that you're going to be able to talk about in interviews. And also, it's not just about stories to talk about, it's skills that you're actually gaining. So if you work in healthcare now and you're looking to change functions, or you know what your MAP is or what your internship is going to be, and you want to do something a little different from that, this is really an opportunity for you to experience something different than what you've had, or to really reinforce something that you want to go into. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. MAP, like I said, is a class. We're going to talk a little about some of the electives that you guys can do as well. And one of the benefits you'll see here is that Michigan has a lot of health-related things.
Yeah, so this is just a sampling of some of the healthcare-related classes that are offered at Ross. And I think the one thing that is consistent across all these classes is that our faculty are really excellent. They're all very engaged in the healthcare world, and they're all very enthusiastic about bringing that knowledge, bringing their experiences to the students. And even outside of the classroom, they're great resources, whether it's just for discussions on healthcare policy or for networking or anything like that. They're very supportive. They're very involved in our club activities as well. For me, the class that stands out from this list is Comprehensive Healthcare Strategies, which I took last spring, and that really stood out because of the way that class pulled together sort of core concepts from all of our introductory classes, so finance, operations, marketing. All of that came together in a healthcare with a healthcare perspective, and that's something that you don't really get in the core classes. So having those concepts pulled together in an industry that was interesting to me was really helpful. As you can see, we have at Michigan a lot of other really great schools, just really strong academically across the board, where there are classes that are also healthcare related. Or not, just a wide variety of classes that you can take outside of your Ross experience that can really help build your overall, academic background and understanding.
So this is Pat. Sorry, I'm going to start to identify myself from now on before I start talking. One of the things that we think is a strength at the University of Michigan is that we have strong programs across the university. So it's not just that Ross healthcare classes are great, and they are, but we also strongly encourage people to go to other graduate programs because they are also experts in the field. You should absolutely be taking a class or 2 in the School of Public Health. you should be going to the Ford School. These are all disciplines that affect the healthcare industry, and so you should know the vernacular and how those disciplines are approaching healthcare. As Lucas had said, this is a very small cross-section of the Ross coursework or the classes that are offered. We have many more that are available to us. One of the ones that sticks out to me is the DE 688, which is the DC policy residential. So this is a class that's taught actually in May. So after graduation, I did this between my first and second year. You actually go to DC for a week, and it's taught by Tom Buckmuller, who is a healthcare economist and was on the Council of Economic Advisors, which is the economic council for the President of the United States. So he knows what he's talking about. In that class, we were in DC at an interesting time. So if you guys remember back to the passage of the American Health Care Act, which was the Republican effort to kind of replace Obamacare, we were actually at the White House when the House passed the American Health Care Act. And so we walked out of a meeting with the Council of Economic Advisors, and we saw Tom Price, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, walking into the West Wing to go celebrate. We talked to Matt Fiedler, who was on the Council of Economic Advisors, who basically was informing personally Barack Obama about the economic implications of the Affordable Care Act. We were talking to healthcare journalists like Julie Rovner, who is really at the forefront of kind of healthcare journalism. She's the head of Kaiser Health News and is an NPR correspondent. So we had a personal session with her. We were talking to the head of the Business Roundtable. So there are a number of things that stick out for that class, and I think that is an amazing class, but that doesn't take away anything from the broader opportunities at Ross. All of these classes are amazing. Even if you're not traveling to DC, they bring in guest speakers who are kind of heading the kind of at the forefront of their particular part of the healthcare industry, and so the access is also really amazing in our healthcare coursework.
That's awesome. It's interesting as I talk to students and they bring some of these classes to life. It's kind of like, I want to take that class. That sounds amazing. It's really a great opportunity to do some of these classes and see how some of the things you're learning in the class are being used in politics or in companies. And I think that's something that our classes really specialize in. The other thing I did want to point out about this slide is, so Michigan has over 100 graduate programs in the top 10. The schools I've highlighted on here specifically have healthcare related courses. So those are things that if you're interested in healthcare, you can take things in health or informatics or engineering or some of these other schools here. There's much more than this that you can take courses in if you want to. The other thing I wanted to point out is that you have students from these other programs in your classes that are taking Ross classes as electives, because Pat said there's a lot of healthcare courses here within Ross too. So you're going to have students that might be an engineering student or a public policy student and that are in these other top programs that are in your classes too, and providing their perspective in getting, we really believe that, like I said earlier, in building diverse classes, because you're going to have diversity of thought and have the more perspectives you can bring, the better solutions you can usually come up with. So I think that's something really great about Michigan, is that you have students from other programs in your classes as well. Like Courtney, who's a dual degree. All right. So the next part of that goes along with that, so that's the actual courses you can take. There's a ton of opportunities in Michigan and in Ann Arbor that you can get involved in that are related to healthcare too. So this is a slide that kind of highlights some of the basics, but I will let these guys talk about some of their experiences dealing with them.
Yeah, so building on kind of the theme of experiential learning within Ross, one of the things that the club really focuses on, and as well as the administration, is providing other kind of co-curricular opportunities, or extracurricular opportunities, I should say, within the University of Michigan. And again, this goes to the interdisciplinary efforts that really healthcare necessitates. So we have a number of extracurricular opportunities. So we have the Institute for Health Policy and Innovation. We have the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. We have Sling Health. We have the Tech Transfer Office. And then we also have the William Davidson Institute. And let me highlight one of my experiences within the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. So this is a nationwide effort that was started by Donald Berwick, who was the head of CMS. And it's all focused on improving the quality of care that is delivered. And we have a local chapter at the University of Michigan. So we have consulting projects within IHI, and you work with healthcare institutions locally in the Ann Arbor area or in the broader Detroit area to work on a process improvement issue that they are having with the delivery of healthcare. So one of the things that was really important for me from this experience was I have no provider experience. I haven't worked at a provider before. I'm not going to work for a provider after school. But it's really important for me to work in healthcare to understand how care is delivered and how process improvement happens in the provider setting. So that was an opportunity to work within IHI to experience somewhat the ways that providers work and be involved in that care setting. So that was something that I took away from this as I looked at all of the experiential learning that I really wanted to get out of my Michigan Ross experience. And Courtney?
I also did a project with IHI last year when I was at the School of Public Health, mainly because I was interested in working in the provider space, or at least getting exposure to it initially, especially since I had a limited healthcare background. So my project was also provider focused, as all the IHI projects are, in terms of working with the local student-run free clinic that was run by the medical students at Michigan. To help them improve their process of getting their patients signed up for Medicaid or other health insurance. And I can also touch on CHART, which is, I haven't worked for CHART, but it is a nonprofit that one of my professors is the executive director of, Marianne Newdow-Phillips. And it's a nonprofit that provides objective factual information to help policymakers and other large public institutions basically make decisions based on, what they're understanding about the healthcare policy space and what the implications are. And I had some classmates who worked with CHART and had great experiences there. Sling Health, I've heard, so similar to, or actually different from IHI, is more focused on the medical device space and has an interdisciplinary group of students from the School of Business, for example, and biomedical students to work together to, I think, come up with a new product or innovation to improve the health of others. So it really just depends what you're looking for within the healthcare space, because it's so broad. There's so many different subsegments you can focus on. And I think there are so many opportunities here at Michigan, and it's really exciting.
You're also doing an internship with the medical school, right?
Yeah, I'm
so it's
doing
like kind of experiential healthcare too,
definitely.
but also paid, I assume.
Yeah, so I'm actually I did my summer internship at the University of Michigan's health system, doing operational process improvement work, specifically related to their process for discharging patients more efficiently and safely. And I am still working with them part-time to work in the emergency department. And that it's been a great experience just getting exposure, working with clinical leadership and understanding how the provider space works. Even though I'm currently recruiting for med device and pharmaceutical companies, it's important to understand how the provider space works, because a lot of them are the customers of medical device companies and pharmaceutical companies. So it's good to have that perspective.
Yeah. The other things too, if you guys have questions, we'll put up our contact information at the end if you want to email or you can ask them. But the other things I wanted to highlight, if you're interested in entrepreneurial activities, Zell Lurie Institute is within Ross and has a ton of different things, whether it's you want to be part of a team that learns does a business competition and learns how to pitch things. So we've had students partner with medical students who have different things they're doing, and our students essentially write the business plans for them, and they've gone further and gotten funding and things through some of these competitions. They also have funds where you can be a part of, where you actually have real dollars that you're investing in companies, and it just depends on the type of your fund you're on. But there's things that most of them typically have healthcare circles. So you look at different types of healthcare companies that are looking for investments, and you are essentially doing a due diligence and making sure and doing pitches to figure out which ones you're going to make investments in. And then William Davidson Institute does a ton with emerging markets. So if you're interested in that type of thing, they have classes, they have internships, there's MAP projects that are focused on that. So there's really a ton of different things, as you see with some of these logos and what Pat and Courtney were just talking about, whether it's learning about medical devices, as payer versus provider, like there's all these different types of things that you can get involved in to really deepen your experiences that you have. And that said, we're going to switch a little bit to how those things are preparing you, hopefully for a job that you want to do post Ross. And we're going to switch into some of the career resources that you can use. So whether you're coming from healthcare and want to switch to a different function, or if you're coming from something completely different and you want to be switching into healthcare, there's a ton of different resources that you can use. So you see, this slide really outlines what the support network is. And I always like to tell people, like, you can use the most successful people are going to use all of these generally, but you're not going to use all of them all the time. Like, you're going to figure out which ones work the most for you, which ones have the type of resources that you need that complement your skills. And then you're going to use those a little bit more, and you might be using some of these at different points during your time at Ross or even after Ross for some of them. So you'll see there's career development staff coaches. So within our career development office, there's a staff coach that's dedicated to, her focus is healthcare, and she also works with marketing students. And you can always make individual appointments with a staff coach. The career development office also trains about 70 different second-year students that are peer coaches that lead FACT groups, and Courtney's going to talk about those in a minute. There's an employer relations team on career development office that helps work with different companies to be coming to Ross to be recruiting students. The Healthcare and Life Sciences Club does a ton with that as well. And the career clubs, which is the Healthcare and Life Sciences Club, which these guys are all a part of and are going to be talking about soon. And then I don't want to forget about the alumni network. So we'll be covering that a little bit as well. But that is huge for Ross because Michigan has one of the largest living alumni networks in the world. And so that is really helpful as you want to be connecting with different companies. So Courtney, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with FACT Group? What we have up here is a sample curriculum that FACT groups go through. But could you just explain kind of what it is, what a FACT group is, and if you guys were part of, if Pat and Lucas want to join in too, can talk a little about FACT groups, because I think that's something that's pretty unique to Ross.
Sure. So FACT group is basically having a small group meetings on a weekly basis, and you have a peer coach who is an MBA too, specific to an industry or function. So within healthcare, we have 2 different FACT group leaders, and I'm in one of the groups, and we meet weekly, as mentioned, to go through basically the steps to strengthen how you're doing the recruiting process. So basically starting off with networking, since the Healthcare Life Science Symposium starts off pretty early on in the school year in late September. We go over basically what happens during the symposium because there are recruiters there, and how to network with them, and what to do at corporate events when there are presentations with companies coming, what kind of information you want to glean from them, going over resumes because you want to submit them to the companies it's usually around fall B when there's the deadline, and understanding what resources there are out there to understand what each different company does, and if it's the right fit for you, how to reach out to different recruiters to have phone chats with them or attend events such as resume reviews or mock interviews with them. And these are basically what the order of the FACT group meetings, how they tend to go. I think this is basically exactly what I've been going through so far. So we're in about week 7 doing behavioral interviews right now. So I just had my FACT group meeting this morning, actually, with a group of about 5 people, and it's nice because it's informal, and you know, the fact group leader has been through exactly what you've been through the year before, and it's nice to have, you know, that peer support group as well as accountability group to, you know, keep you, you know, responsible for what you need to do from week to week, but also you can share each other's experiences from the recruiting process.
If I can add on, and this is Pat, so I was also in a healthcare fact group last year. I would echo a lot of what Courtney said, which is it keeps you accountable and it provides you a community of people that you can rely on. So as you go into January and February and you're doing interviews and you're trying to decide what amongst hopefully our many offers you're going to take, you have people that you know you can go to and have a discussion with because they're either, you know, you have a personal relationship with them or they have been through the same process. So you are ultimately mostly applying for the same jobs if it's on-campus opportunities. And one of the things that I noticed with the fact group was I really relied on them to get me through the interview process because it can be stressful. And any tips and tricks that you know, people who have seen the interviewer before, or they have, you know, they've heard things about a particular type or a particular company, those informal relationships are really what sets you apart, and really what you can rely on when you come here.
And the next slide is going over some of the stats that we've kind of already touched on, that Ross has a lot of people that are either changing industry or function. But the other one, so 88% for this past year. But the other thing that's important to note with this slide is that people are getting jobs too. 98% of our students had jobs within 3 months. So odds are generally in your favor with that. So I'm going to turn it back to Pat to talk a little bit about the Healthcare and Life Science Club specifically, which these guys obviously value because they're here today.
Yeah, so I'm part of the HLS, Healthcare and Life Science Club leadership. HLS is one of a few professionally focused clubs at Ross, and I like to say that our goal, like our job, is to get you a job. So what we do is we set up programming that's going to set you up for success as you go through the recruiting process, whether you have a healthcare background or whether you do not. So some of the things that we offer a boot camp at the beginning of the year. So before classes even start, it's the Friday before school starts in September. We offer a boot camp where we bring in people like Tom Buckmuller and Marianne Udall-Phillips, who are experts in the field from across the spectrum in the industry, to come and talk about their particular expertise and give an overview also of that particular part of the industry, whether it's pharma, device, provider, payer, so that it really sets everyone on an equal playing field in terms of knowledge of the industry. We also offer a symposium, which we'll touch on a little bit with Lucas and Courtney, who are actually two of the main organizers of the symposium, but that is our large conference at the beginning of every year where you have the opportunity to interact with recruiters and talk about healthcare. We offer corporate treks, so we organize treks to Minneapolis, to Boston, to New Jersey, kind of the hubs of healthcare in the United States. And we also do a lot of corporate events. In addition to the corporate presentations that you get formally through the recruiting process, we offer other corporate events, lunch and learns, kind of case seminars, mock interviews, and then every single Sunday we offer an education session. So we'll go more in depth about a particular part of the field or a particular part of the industry. We will spend a whole weekend or a whole day focused on your Odyssey, which is kind of your pitch, your 2 to 3 minute pitch for recruiters that you'll start out every interview saying. We'll focus on, resume reviews. So you name it, our job is to educate you and get you prepared, in addition to your experience in the fact groups, get you prepared for the recruiting cycle and ultimately get you a job, because we realize you're here to learn, but you're also here to, you're here to get a job as well. So we want to set you up for success. And I'll turn it over to Lucas and Courtney to give a little bit more detail about the symposium because it is such an amazing event.
Yeah, so the symposium is just our name for our big main event in terms of recruiting. So we'll have all of our corporate sponsors come onto campus for 2 days. It's usually in late September, and it is pretty early on in the school year. So it's the first opportunity for all the students, and especially the MBA ones, to start forming these connections, start forming these relationships with the recruiters that come on campus. A lot of these recruiters, they're going to be Ross alumni that are very enthusiastic about expanding the Ross family at their companies. And so this is just another example of the Go Blue, Go Anywhere. We have fantastic network at all of these healthcare companies.
Can you give an example of a couple of the companies that come back for symposium?
Oh, yeah. So I think this year, the companies span all of the different healthcare industries. So starting with pharma, we had GSK, Bristol Myers Squibb, Johnson & Johnson. In devices, we had Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson again, Baxter and BD. From providers, we had United Health Group. And we have healthcare consulting. So ZS Associates and Chartis.
DaVita.
Oh, and DaVita, yes, from sort of, I guess, the provider area. And finally, we also had Cerner, so sort of the health IT is also represented. So really, any part of the industry is going to be well represented. And so not only do we offer sort of structured networking opportunities for students to reach out and meet these recruiters, we also give the recruiters a chance to sort of give back to the students. We have a keynote speaker this year is from DaVita. He gave a really great speech about all the issues facing healthcare today, and also a lot of the different efforts that DaVita and also other companies in the healthcare space are going to are involved in trying to meet some of those needs. We also have panel topics that are participated in by representatives from these companies, and again, they speak to in a smaller forum, speak to these issues and what their companies are doing to address them. There are also opportunities for students to directly ask these recruiters about some of the initiatives that are going on.
I wanted to add about the panelists that it was a great opportunity not only for the students to learn more about the issues that companies face in terms of, for example, our panel topics are value-based care, healthcare disparities, innovation in healthcare. And what was interesting was that we had these companies across the spectrum of healthcare talking about these same issues together in the panels, and even the recruiters reflected on how it was valuable even to them to speak with other individuals from other segments of the healthcare industry to really bounce off ideas off each other. So I think it's a great way to promote, it's like a two-way street in terms of the value that was gained from this whole experience.
Yeah, it is. I think that one of the great things too is this takes place in September, so you're learning this stuff like right away and getting on the ground going and meeting these people right away, which sometimes is a little intimidating, but I think at the end people really value having those experiences right away and attending these panels and attending these sessions and meeting the alumni right in September. All right, I am going to do a quick plug. If you do have questions, make sure to be answering them. I mean, not answering them, asking them. I can answer them, or we can answer them. So make sure you're submitting those. We'll be answering those in just a minute here. But first, Pat is going to talk a little bit more about the alumni network.
Yeah, so as Lucas and Courtney have said, we have very engaged alumni that come back to campus. They work for companies that are recruiting on campus, but we also have 500,000+ alumni everywhere in the world. So you name the industry, you name the company that you want to go work for, it doesn't matter whether they come on campus or not. They are going to answer your email and they are going to do their darndest to try and help you achieve what you want to achieve. And I don't know how far along you guys are kind of in your decision process or whether you have reached out to alumni, but I would strongly recommend that you do so. You will get responses, and I think that will also show the difference of Ross versus maybe some other schools that you're considering. As far as the alumni career resources, your Ross experience doesn't end when you graduate. So you have lifelong career services. So as you are transitioning to another part of your career, or you want to switch careers, or whatever you want to do, Ross is here for you after you graduate as well. And that goes along with the lifelong learning. So we have the Alumni Advantage, which is kind of the lifelong commitment that the dean announced a number of years ago, which is you have free tuition for any executive MBA class if you want to come back to campus or go to any of the satellite locations. So you can continue learning even after you are done being a student at Ross for these 2 years. So it does not end. You will forever be a Michigan MBA.
You never end being a student, really.
Exactly.
You're part of the network for life.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to continue developing through your careers, and that's what Ross is here to provide, is that support throughout your career as well. So we bring up this slide, and I'm not going to list all of these companies because that would take too long. But what I want you to take away from this is these are all of the companies, or I guess a cross-section of the companies that we have recent alumni working at. So if you want to go to pharma biotech, you can go to pharma and biotech, and we can point you to the right people. If you want to go to med device, we have people there. If you want to go to any part of payer, provider, retail, health, you can do that. If you want to do consulting at some of, one of the big three, we absolutely have a ton of people who are doing that. Or if you want to be a little bit more specialized and work for a healthcare consulting group like Chartis or like ZS Associates, you can do that as well. So we have a number of different companies that are recruiting on campus, off campus, and it's all that the alumni network that we really leverage to gain access to this wide range of the industry.
All right, so with that said, we are going to switch over to questions. So a couple of things, I think I've seen people answering some of these, but I do have all of our contact information up here. So Pat, Lucas, Courtney, the general admissions, you're welcome to email me directly. Happy to answer your questions if you have individual things. But I'll pick some questions here that I think multiple people might be interested in knowing. So could one of you speak a little bit to some of the things, if somebody's interested in healthcare marketing or healthcare consulting, or some of these things that seem like an intersection of two different areas, can you speak to what resources are available for that, or what kinds of things they should be involved in to be going into those different areas that kind of combine two career interests, essentially?
Yeah, so the Healthcare Club does do a lot in terms of preparing all of our members for a wide variety of different, functional roles within the healthcare industry. And that's partially, because the MBA2s and our recent alumni, they've done internships or are going into these fields or were from these fields before. So there's a lot of knowledge, there's a wealth of knowledge in the club that first years can draw on, and second years too from the peers. In addition, I would say what a lot of people do is participate in the other professional clubs, so consulting club and marketing club. They will give you a lot more focus on what kind of interview questions or what kind of preparation, the interview process and recruiting process for those specific industries. And they can be very helpful, especially in terms of providing frameworks for preparing for case questions for consulting and possibly marketing as well.
Yeah, I would say I don't know that anyone here is just involved in HLS. So I'm a member of the Michigan Marketing Club and also Design and Business. A number of people are also HLS and consulting, or HLS and tech, or all three, or you can join as many clubs as you want and get all of the resources that you want. So you can customize it in that way. The other thing that I would say is, particularly when it comes to healthcare marketing, that is something that is very common, is that you will be a product manager for a particular healthcare product, if you're doing device or you're doing pharma. And that's really, I think, one of our core competencies is preparing people, particularly for healthcare marketing or healthcare tech, is another one that I think we're pretty good at. So you can supplement what HLS doesn't offer with another club's experience, to echo what Lucas was saying. And I think a lot of people do that here.
Yeah, so I mean, that kind of segues into another question. I'm seeing a couple people ask around the number of people interested in healthcare at Ross, which is a little difficult to answer sometimes because there are so many people that are in tech that might also be in healthcare. Are there a number of people that are in one thing that are, you know, like healthcare kind of spans a lot of different industries, I guess is what I'm getting at. So it's a little difficult to pinpoint exactly which area or how many people are in that, because I think people might be working in, you know, like in one area, and they're also dealing with healthcare too. It is, I mean, healthcare is a huge portion of the country's GDP. You're going to be working in it in a lot of different areas. Do you have a sense of how many people are involved in the healthcare club, though?
Yeah, so I think we have about 100 to 150 150 to 100 to 150 members. I would say active members on any given education session would be 40. So it's a pretty sizable amount. And then as Taya was saying, we have a number of people who worked in healthcare who, you know, came back from their summers, and we had no idea they were working in healthcare, I guess, from the club's perspective. So there are a number of people that I think probably fly under the radar and aren't actively involved in the club, but they also have found, you know, the career resources to be incredibly supportive, and so they are pursuing it regardless. So it is a smaller cohort than you might have at other schools, but I do think that one of the differentiators that I always like to say when I'm talking to prospective students is that the smaller community, I think, is much more tight than it would be at a different school. That the same employers are recruiting here, so the ratio of people who are actually interested in the job compared to the number of slots that are open is really great. And I don't know of anyone that walked into kind of deciding internships that didn't have multiple offers that they were juggling in healthcare. So that is something that I think is truly differentiating as well, is that the ratio is really
Opportunities are plentiful.
Yes, the opportunities are
good. So another question I see in here, and I know we're wrapping up a little bit here, so maybe I'll do one more question after this. But somebody I think is a valid question is, you guys are probably looking at other top competitive schools. What made you end up deciding on Ross specifically for healthcare? I think we've gotten at that through some of these other opportunities, but I don't know if you knew about those ahead of time. What were some of the factors when you were deciding? And maybe, I don't know, Courtney, you're newer to this, but like, or a little closer to this, but I don't know if there's things that you guys saw as like a key differentiator when you were looking at other schools for healthcare versus Ross. Kind of demonstrated that throughout this webinar.
Yeah, this is Lucas. I'll start. I think the one of the big difference makers for me, definitely just the visibility of healthcare at Ross is really strong, and a big part of that, I think, is the MAP program. There's just a ton of opportunities, a very unique set of opportunities there. But I think probably the difference maker for me was the community when I came to visit, and also just reaching out. All of the the prospective students I met all seemed really great, and definitely the current students that I spoke with, it made me feel very welcome, felt like a really strong fit, and just that collaborative feel, the very strong culture was really the difference maker for me.
I would say for me there were a couple of things. So I was actually considering a dual degree versus just doing a pure MBA, and for me it came down to how much time do I want to spend in school, and I didn't want to do 3 years. With that, I felt like the designation of the healthcare concentration was something that was differentiating for me. I felt like the experiential learning, to echo what Lucas said, was not only within the MAP program, but also the other student-run organizations that you can dip your toe into was another important thing. And then for me was really a non-healthcare reason, which was I just really liked the culture and the people that I was around. And I would say, if this is notice that as you're going through and you're talking to people and you're interviewing at Ross and you're interviewing at other schools, notice how you feel when you leave the building or when you hang up the phone. And if you feel like you want to have another conversation with them, then that's probably the right fit. And so for me, that was Ross, where I really liked my peer group. I really liked the administration as I was going, as I was coming in the experience that they put together. It's a very welcoming environment. And so that's not a healthcare reason, but it is something that I would recommend that everyone take notice of as you're having conversations across your entire kind of range of schools within your consideration set.
Awesome. That actually seems like a great note to end on, and I recognize it's 2 o'clock, even though I said we'd have time for one more question. I will follow up. Like I said, if you did ask questions and didn't have them answered, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll do a follow-up to have my email address associated with this as well. But thank you everybody for attending. Hopefully you learned a lot about healthcare at Ross and know how expansive the opportunities really are here. We're really proud of the healthcare program and all the different opportunities. And hopefully you learned something today and are interested in healthcare at Ross. Thank you.